musical alphabet consists of the letters A through G, and those letters are simply the names associated with certain frequencies. There are only 12 notes in music, 12 frequencies, repeated at higher or lower pitches. Here are the 12 notes. A sharp and B flat, B, C sharp and D flat, D sharp and E flat, E, F sharp and G flat, G and G sharp and A flat. Notice how some of the notes have two names? These are known as sharps and flats. This is the sharp symbol, meaning higher, and this is the flat symbol, meaning lower. Here are the notes on a piano. Notice how there are no sharps or flats on the white keys. They are all on the black keys. So with two names, how do we know what name to call the note? Well, that depends on what direction we are going. If we were going up the notes, we use sharps. And if we are going down the notes, we use flats. So for instance, if we started on A, then moved up a note, it would be A sharp. Then we move to B, C, C sharp, D, and D sharp. Now if we were going down and we started on the E note, we would be going E, E flat, D, D flat, C, B, B flat. So notice how there is no black key between B and C and E and F. This means that there is no sharps and flats between those notes. So it's really important that you remember that, so I will repeat it. There are no sharps and flats between B and C and E and F. The notes are a never-ending cycle that goes both ways. The notes are repeated in things called octaves. An octave is the same note, only a different pitch, higher or lower. So you see here, this is a C note. An octave up is another C note. And another octave up is another C note. All the same notes, just higher or lower. You will learn more about octaves later when we start naming the notes on the fretboard. You want to be able to fluently recite the musical alphabet forwards and backwards, so practice it in your head or on paper whenever you get a chance until you have completely memorized it. So notes on the low E string, okay, very easy to remember. Obviously the E string is just an E note. On the first fret we have an F, and the third fret is a G. So we have E, F, G. Okay, pause the video and go over that as many times as you need to completely memorize it. E, F, G. Now once you have that, we move up to the 5th fret, and here we have an A note. Then on the 7th fret, we have a B note, and on the 8th fret, we have a C note. So we have A, B, C. A, B, C. So from the beginning, we have E, F, G, and then from the 5th fret, A, B, C. So pause the video, go over that until you got that completely memorized. And then we will just want to add in this one note here, okay? This is just the D note. Up on its lonesome on the 10th fret. E, F, G, A, B, C, D. And obviously 2 frets higher starts an E note again, and that would start the pattern again, so we'd have E, F, G, A, B, C, D. Okay, but the main thing is that you just have them sorted up to the 12th fret. So remember that just below in the PDF file download that you have a diagram that's going to show you all the notes on the top string in case you do forget. And just remember that the sharps and flats just sit in between those notes. So if I said where is A flat, you know, A is here, it's just down 1, so A flat would be on the 4th fret. If you're looking for C sharp, you know, C is here on the 8th fret. It's obviously just 1 fret higher, and that's where C sharp is. Okay, so just pause the video and make sure you have memorized all of those notes on the top string before you move on. Now you need to memorize a very easy to remember scale pattern as well. And you may already know this, but we're just going to cover it here just in case. And remember that you also do have this in your PDF download as well. Scale diagrams are very easy to read. It starts out just like a chord diagram, and then we just tip it on its side. As you can see, this is just a snapshot of the fretboard, with the thickest string here and the thinnest string up here, and obviously all the others in the middle. Pause the video and read through all the other parts of the scale diagram and make sure you understand them before moving on. You'll notice that there are no open notes here, so it tells you exactly what fret to start on here. So to play this scale, you start from the lowest note and go through to the highest. Then back down to the lowest note. So to recap, this is a scale diagram, a snapshot of the fretboard. You start from the lowest note, play through to the highest note, and back down to the lowest note again. So this is called the G pentatonic scale pattern, and it looks like this. So don't worry if what I'm about to say will just go straight over your head, but this is just for those who are wanting to know, why it's actually called a G pentatonic scale pattern. So I'm going to completely leave out the pentatonic part. We'll get to that in another video. But the reason why it's called a G pattern is because it's just built around the open G chord. So if I play G like this and pretend like I'm barring with my first finger and move it up to the position that we're actually playing the scale in, you'll see that the scale pattern just sits right there nicely inside that chord shape, hence why it's called the G pattern, just built around that chord shape. So you're going to start out with your first finger on the 5th fret of the low E string, and you're going to play that, and then use your pinky to play the 8th fret. Okay, now I really want you to make sure you're using exactly the same fingers as I'm using, because it's going to make it much easier for you to memorize. So 5th fret, 8th fret with your pinky. Okay, and you want to use alternate picking with this too, so down, up, and then on the A string you're just playing the 5th fret with your first finger, and then 3rd finger is holding down the 7th fret. So far we have this. And then so for the next 2 strings, you're just going to go 5, 7, just like you did for the A string. So from the top. And then for the remaining 2 strings, you're just going to do what you did for the low E string. So 5, 8 using your pinky. And when you get to the bottom, you're just going to play it in reverse. So pause the video, familiarize yourself with that scale pattern before moving on, because it is very important that you do have a very strong memory of that pattern, because that's what we're going to be using to be soloing with. Now there are 2 very important notes that you need to remember within the scale pattern, and again, they're very easy to remember. Luckily they're just on the top string. So here where your pinky lies is the major root note of the pattern, and here where your first finger lies is the minor root note of the pattern. So just memorize that the pinky is the major root note and the first finger is the minor root note. Okay, now once you do have that memorized, that's going to allow you to position this in any major or minor key. So we'll cover that in a minute. So playing the scale in this position can be played in either C major or A minor. Okay, now every major key has what's called a relative minor, and every minor key has what's called a relative major. So it just basically means that it can be either key, they just use the same notes, and depending what backing is being used is, what key it actually is. So just to prove to you that, this actually works, I'm going to chuck on a jam track in the key of C major, and I'm just going to play through the scale a couple of times so that you can see that, the notes sound 100% correct to the jam track that is in C. And then I'm just going to play around a little bit and show you a little bit about what we are going to be doing very shortly. Alright, so that's a really good example of just jumping around, playing some random notes, okay? Doesn't have to be anything special to begin with, okay? Obviously you can add in a lot more flair with things like bends, slides, tapping if you want to, vibrato, hammer-ons, pull-offs, and anything else you can imagine, okay? But I don't want you to do that just yet. What I want you to do right now is something called wandering, okay? Because it's not meant to sound good just yet, okay? If you're comfortable enough just to jump in straight improvising, then definitely do that, okay? But if you want to get a little bit more familiar with the concepts and ideas, that go along with improvising, then this is a really good way to get used to it. So what I want you to do is just sort of jump around randomly, just playing random notes of the scale. So I want you to grab your guitar right now and make sure it's in tune, because we're going to be doing this to the backing track. Now, just as a quick example, right? You're just going to be playing completely random notes from all over the place in the pattern. So something like this. All right, now as you do that to the backing track, you'll see that even though you're just jumping to random notes, all of those notes completely fit to the backing track because they are in the right key. Now, remember, this isn't about trying to make it sound good, it's just getting you familiar with the idea of improvising. So I'm going to hit the play button on here, and I want you to join in with me. And so I'll just get it started, and then you just look at the pattern and then just start hitting random notes along with me, okay? Don't copy what I'm doing, hit your own random notes, all right? Let's get started. Okay, so that's a really quick example of wandering around the scale pattern to the backing track. Now remember, you do have that backing track just below this video. You can download that to your phone, to your tablet, to your MP3 player or whatever, or you can stream it straight from this page. Okay, now what I really want you to do is to spend a little bit of time just doing this wandering around kind of thing. So feel free to pause the video now and just have a little play around with that before going on. So what you just did was improvise with me. It might not have sounded all that great, but that's not what matters at the moment. What matters is that you're just getting comfortable with the idea and just getting used to, jumping around that scale pattern. Now I'm going to add 3 more notes, and this will just give you a little bit more room to move around in. So we have the scale pattern here. Okay, and what we're going to be doing is adding this note, and this note. So these 3 notes here, okay, so that's on the 9th fret, and on the 10th fret, and on the 10th fret again. So if we were, for instance, put your first finger here, normally this is where your 3rd finger will play, and you can play it like this. Okay, now what that is going to let us do is we can be here in the G pattern, so, and then slide up. Obviously chucking on a little bit of a bend there, but you can see how that just gives us a little bit more room to move around. So remember that you do have this in the reference PDF that you can download just underneath this video, okay? But it's really easy to remember because you've got these notes here, and then it's just shifted up 2 frets, exactly the same. Shift it up. So now I'm going to do another demonstration to that C major jam track using the G pentatonic pattern. adding in these 3 extra notes. So here we go. So now you know how to, improvise and start playing around with this concept in the key of C major to that backing track that is the key of C major, right, in this position. Now, if you had an A minor track, you can use exactly the same scale, the exact same position, and be in the key of A minor, right? Now, I'm going to show you how you'd move this to be in a different key. So, for instance, I've got another backing track that I've given you, and this one is in B minor, and I'm going to show you an example of that. So we look at the scale pattern, right, and we have the major root note over here and the minor root note over here. So we want this finger here to land onto a B note, and we know, because we now know the notes on the fretboard on the top string, that we have E, F, G, A, B. So B is here. So as long as I put my first finger here and play through the scale pattern, then I'm going to be in the perfect position to play along to the B minor track. Now remember, we have that scale position, and I'm also adding in those extra notes just 2 frets higher over here, so I can walk up to that, right? So this is going to be my home, okay? And remember that I've placed the index finger onto the note that I wanted, which is a B, and it's the minor root note, so this is going to be in B minor. Here's an example. So you see, I'm using exactly the same pattern and, just moving around in the same sort of ways. And it sounds perfect to the B minor track because I'm playing in the right position. All I did was put my first finger on the B note, and, it's the root note, the minor root note, so everything is placed perfectly into position. So now here's another example, right? Now I'm going to play in the key of E minor. So now I want my first finger to land on an E note. Okay, so I've got the open E note, all right? Now, obviously, my first finger isn't necessarily going to go there. So how do I do this? Well, just imagine the scale pattern was here. Now, if I shift it down a fret, I've now just got lots of open strings. So I just go like this. All right, now, so we have an E note here. Now, where else do we have an E note? Right up here on the 12th fret. So I can play right up here and be in the key of E minor, and also down here. All right? So just the same way as you can play an E minor down here and also play an E minor up here, you can do that with the other patterns as well. You just need to make sure you are going to the right position. So this scale pattern that, for instance, works here in A minor also works perfectly for A minor up here on the 17th fret, because it's the same note. So you can jump between them. All right, so now I'm going to give you an example of this E minor. So I'm placing my first finger here on the 12th fret, and let's get started. So what notes should you start and finish on? Well, a safe option is always the root note. Now, obviously, as I mentioned, if we put this scale pattern back into the position that we learnt it in, so the key of A minor or C major, there is, a minor root note here. There is also a minor root note down here, and then also another one here. So there are multiple root notes inside of that pattern. But what I would recommend is not worrying about those in the beginning, because your ear is pretty good at picking things up. And if something doesn't sound completely correct, like as far as ending a song, then just keep moving down the pattern until you find the note that does sound good to end on. So how do you get better at improvising and better at soloing? Well, you need to try stuff. You need to spend a lot of time doing it, and you also need to try out new ideas. So after this video is finished, then go back and see what I was doing. I did keep everything in those examples fairly simple, so you should be able to pick up what I was doing. Also go check out your favorite guitarists, because obviously they do a lot of cool stuff, I'm sure, and you can definitely pick up a lot of good ideas to try in your own improvisation and your own soloing from them. So now you know the musical alphabet, the notes on the top string of the guitar, the pentatonic scale pattern that's built around the G chord, the root notes inside that pattern, how to place it into any major or minor key, and how to get started with improvisation. So now it's time to start putting it to work, okay? Now, in order to get really comfortable with it, as I said, you do need to spend a bit of time. But the good news is that it starts out fun and it just keeps getting better and better. So below you have the 3 backing tracks that I gave demonstrations with. So 3 different keys to practice this stuff to. So download those and play them on whatever you play your music on. Jam along them to your guitar, whether you've got electric, whether you've got acoustic, it doesn't matter. All the principles apply. And make sure you download the PDF file that you'll find just below next to those MP3 downloads for the backing tracks, because there's all the reference material for everything that we've covered here today.